All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Slavish, Chair of the Workforce Housing Committee. We have a number of new members to welcome tonight. And I think before we do that, we want to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was all the way back in June, I believe. So do I have a motion for approval on that?
This is Ben. I'll approve, or motion to approve.
Thanks, Ben. A second.
This is Randall. I'll second.
All right, thanks. All in favor of that approval, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thanks for that. So moving on to the agenda, number one is welcome and introduction of our new members. So I don't know how you want to do that, Daphne. It could be helpful if maybe those of you who are new to the committee could just do a quick intro on you and your background for the benefit of the rest of us. That'd be great.
Yeah, let's start with Alan.
Sure. Alan Hickel, new member. I've been living in Madison for the last 7 years, and then been in the greater Madison area off and on for the last 14 or 15 years. Work at Epic, and yeah.
Great. Welcome, Alan. Thanks for volunteering to be on this committee.
Next, let's go with Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Krull. I grew up in Green Bay and then moved away for 20 some years. And I just moved back to Wisconsin because I work from home since the pandemic started. So I moved here. I guess I bought my house at the very end of June. So I'm very new, but thought this would be a, kind of a nice way to be involved and get to know people. And I do research for a living. So that's all.
Great. Welcome, Heather.
And it looks like our Amy Liang is our high school student, and she's not on the meeting yet, so we'll just pause on that for when she joins. And then I'm also a new staff for Workforce Housing. My name is Daphne. I am the associate planner with our Planning and Community Development Department. So yeah, nice to meet all of you, and yeah.
Thanks, Daphne. For the benefit of our new members, maybe the rest of the committee could do a brief introduction of us as well. I'm Mike Slavish, obviously the chair of the committee. I also serve on the Planning Commission, lived in Middleton for going on 10 years now. I work for Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corp. We're an affordable housing owner and developer based here in Madison.
And I'm Randall Crow. I'm the council representative on the committee. I represent District 8 in the city of Middleton, which is on the northeast side of the city. I'm also relatively new because I was just elected in April. So
yep.
I think we had one meeting since then, maybe two, I can't remember. So I'm also relatively new to the committee. So. But I've been in Middleton since 1988, so I've been a longtime resident.
Thanks, Randall. Ben?
Hey there. Yep. Ben Roden. So I think this is my third year on the committee. So Heather, I think you mentioned you grew up in Green Bay. So I joined you in that one. So been in Madison for about, we've been in Madison for about Middleton for about 15 years. And I work at US Bank. I actually, mostly with my office is actually in Minneapolis, but I largely work remotely from here.
So I see we also have a couple of our city councilors also on this call, Kathy and Lisa. Do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, this is Kathy. I'm District 1. Just kind of interested in the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Hi, and I'm Lisa Hanairo. I'm District 6.
And then Kelly, how about staff?
Yep, I'm the sustainability coordinator, and I started on the same day that Daphne started, and yeah, I staff the Sustainability Committee.
All right, I think that's, oh, is that everybody? Looks like we have Amy joining as well.
Yeah.
Amy, can you hear us?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I went to the wrong Zoom link and I was just
Oh.
wondering like, why it wouldn't load. And then I remembered that there are two different Zoom links and then I joined this one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Oh, no worries.
quite all right. We were just doing some brief intros for the new members to the committee. So and Amy, you're new to the committee, right? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, just a very, just a brief background on you.
Oh, well, hi, my name is Amy. I'm currently a senior at Middleton High School. And yeah.
Great. Well, welcome everyone. So I think, moving on, unless there's any other questions on the intro, item number 2, which is the Kimberly, the PACE presentation, and we're going to turn it over to you to kick it
Okay.
off.
Let me just share my screen real quick here. And evidently I have a lot of things open. Apologies. Actually, Daphne, would you mind doing that? Because evidently
Sure.
I do have quite a few things open.
Yeah, no problem. I can share my screen and yeah, just let me know when you want to cycle through and everything.
And Kimberly, we're kind of getting an echo with you. I don't know if
Oh.
you might have 2 of these open, like some of the rest of us did.
Oh, let me plug into a headset and see if that's actually going to help.
Okay.
How about now? Is it okay?
Actually, we're still getting kind of the repeat on that. Not sure what's going on.
Oh, shoot. Let me just double check.
Actually, that seems to be better, whatever you're doing now.
Okay, perfect. Let me see if that actually helps out a little bit better. Can you hear me, Noah?
Yeah, I think we're still, is everybody else kind of hearing that echo as well, or maybe it's just me?
Yeah, I
I
just
think
heard it a little bit.
yeah, it's like every now and then there's a little bit.
Okay. Well, bear with me here. Okay, how about now?
Still hearing that.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just gonna say, maybe if all the members go on mute, it might make a difference. Because
Yeah,
we could be picking up sound from someone else's speaker.
We will definitely try that. A little bit better now?
Yes.
Oh,
That was
perfect.
fine. Great.
We'll go there. My name's Kim Johnston. I work with the PACE Wisconsin program. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. Go ahead, Dev. Next. So PACE is kind of a unique financing mechanism that allows for energy efficiency, water efficiency, and renewable energy to be financed by commercial property owners. And it really does work like a tax financing mechanism like you do for sidewalks. So when commercial property owners use this, they pay out their loan twice a year, much like they would for their property taxes. They like it because they can finance 100% of the hard and soft costs, and that it is a fixed rate, long-term type of loan. So it can last up to 20 to 30 years, depending on what measures they include in their commercial property loan. And because of that, it helps them increase their bottom line while lowering their energy costs. So they're paying much less for their utility bills and their water bills. It also is able to be transferred upon sale, and the residents of the properties also tend to see lower utility bills. Go ahead. Right now, we are currently in 51 counties, including Dane. which we figure is approximately about 85% of the commercial building stock for the whole state. Dane County was an early adopter, so we have seen a lot of multifamily, mixed use, and other types of projects within Dane County itself. Go ahead. This is a nice breakdown. We just closed a multifamily building in Madison this week. So there have been 84 projects closed to date, which is about $152 million in green financing. Hospitality market was first as in one of the early adopters because many of the developers have used it in multiple states. We're also seeing multifamily, both student housing, senior living facilities, and market rate properties use PACE, probably because of what's happened with COVID. We haven't seen a lot of office buildings financed with PACE, but we have also seen a lot of mixed use, a few industrial, and even some ag projects that have went through so far. Go ahead. So you're probably wondering what can be financed with PACE. Obviously, since we're here talking about affordable housing, definitely multifamily and affordable housing can be financed even when it's with HUD. We've also had industrial, retail, healthcare, not-for-profits, which can be churches, schools, ag-based production areas, and mixed use. The different types of projects include both new construction or renovations of properties, adaptive reuses of properties, refinancing debt over the last 2 years of an energy efficiency measure that's been installed, or even an equipment installation that's going to be saving water or energy. We did a large loan for a wood floor production facility in northern Wisconsin. So the equipment they saved, I want to say over the course of their loan, they'll be saving $2.5 million in water savings and energy savings on that one just alone. Now, the only thing that you can't use PACE for in the state of Wisconsin is residential properties, and municipal buildings themselves cannot, unfortunately, use PACE. Go ahead and go to the next slide. These are some of the most eligible measures that are often included. So the whole building shell for new construction is obviously allowable. Some of the other measures that we often see are lighting systems or building controls, the whole building envelope itself, furnaces, boilers, chillers, heat pumps, low flow, excuse me, low flow fixtures, or fuel switching. Excuse me, you can go to the next slide. Renewable energy is also included in the eligible improvement list. So we've seen a lot of solar PV on either manufacturing buildings, on some dairy farms, on the cusp of Dane County have installed some of those. We haven't financed any biofuel or wind to this date. But because of the change of the PACE laws in Wisconsin, we have been able to add resiliency measures too. And what that means is that property developers can also now include resiliency measures for stormwater. Go ahead and switch to the next slide. And along with that, EV charging infrastructure. So that goes with new construction and retrofits too. So if you have an existing property that you will want to start adding EV charging infrastructure, both the units themselves, either a level 2 or level 3 charger, those can be financed either independently or along with other measures. And we have been working with the state of Wisconsin to see what the thoroughfares will be and how that's going to be affecting the charging throughout the state and throughout the county. And we're thinking that Dane County looks like it does meet a lot of requirements. And that is something that Daphne, I can send you because I think that's an interesting piece of information to have, at least what will be available within the county and what will be equitable and fair for all community members. Go ahead into the next slide. As I mentioned, Dane County was an early adopter. They've had 23 different projects close, and it has spanned the market really. But as I mentioned before, we've seen a lot of multifamily. Some of these images may be familiar to you. We have Hidden Creek Residences, which are in Middleton. The Emerson, which is on Park Street. That's a mixed use versus a multifamily. The Edge, again, another mixed use case downtown. Master's Residence, which is probably right in between Middleton and Wanakee. But some of these property owners are using both water and utility improvements. So they're doing new construction or retrofit of existing buildings and making sure that they are trying to build a better building. So they're updating their HVAC system, HVAC controls, working with LED lighting and water conservation at the same time. And what we've also seen both in Dane County and the surrounding areas towards Milwaukee is that senior living facilities have also been getting on the PACE bandwagon when they're doing new construction projects. So they are building to make the building last longer and putting in more energy efficient HVAC systems along with solar. And that's something we're really happy to see because these are buildings that will last well past the 50-year mark of a commercial building. You can go to the next slide. So this probably will kind of unpack it a little bit better than maybe I've explained over the phone. So the initial property owner will have their normal mortgage lender, the mortgage loan through a local bank, regional bank, or a national bank. And that's with the larger portion of the debt. And with PACE financing, we will only finance something that's going to be saving energy or water. And then that might also sit in there with the owner's equity. So PACE financing will not always be the cheapest debt that will be in the debt stack for the commercial property owner, but it will be long-term debt. So they'll be locking in 6% up to 30 years. And the up to 30 years seems like a very long time, obviously, but that would be for something that would be a very long-term investment like solar. The normal loan term or an estimated loan term for some of these commercial properties usually is up to 21 to 22 years, depending on what measures they've installed. Loan size can range anywhere in between $100,000 to $50 million. Some of the larger loans we have seen in Milwaukee and in Madison itself, there was an Oscar Mayer loan that went to redevelop one of the office buildings there on that parcel. And I want to think that that was about a $7 million loan. But that was a whole building retrofit. So the average loans we are seeing probably in between 250,000 to, I would say, 10 million. Some of the things that they do need to be mindful of in the state of Wisconsin is that they do need to get the mortgage lender's consent because it does jump ahead of the mortgage debt, because much like property taxes would, the PACE loan sets like a property tax assessment debt would. The security is a property tax assessment, and the loan costs can be up to 100% of the cost. You can go ahead, Daphne. We have tried to make it easier for smaller projects to use PACE. So some of the things that we have done is that we have begun to accept the insurance value versus a commercial appraisal. So you don't need to get a commercial appraisal for your property if the loan is under 250. We have also streamlined requirements for solar projects. So the installer report can be used for the appraisal instead. So that's made it cheaper for people to get through. And then also we're partnered with Focus on Energy to accept their reports instead of having to do an energy assessment by themselves. Go ahead and go to the next one. So the application process is simple for borrowers. There is no application fee. We can work with them to try and set up the application process. It is pretty fast. The Wisconsin PACE Commission meets once a month to approve new projects, and there is no shortage of green financing for the state or the county itself. So we do have people who would love to do affordable housing lending or lending for small, medium, and large size projects. As I mentioned, we do have, I want to say 27 different lenders that are called PACE lenders in the program that are able to lend to the 51 counties participating in the PACE Wisconsin program. They are a mix of local lenders, regional lenders, and national lenders. And we have some that are earmarked that would specifically like to do smaller projects, and some folks who have a larger lender cap that would prefer to do the projects that are the 1.5 to the 10 million. I think that might be my last slide. There is a resource out there for the PACE Wisconsin website. It does give a list of the lenders. I should mention that the contractors are vetted. So we do need the builders that are using the PACE funding to be vetted by PACE Wisconsin first before the property owner can choose that builder. Now, I want to say most of the medium-sized to larger developers and builders are already in that group. I think that is everything. That's an awful lot of information in a short amount of time, but hopefully it gives you a little overview of what PACE is. We have some good testimonials on the website, or at least under About Us, it shows you the 84 different projects that have currently closed in the state and the different measures that they've included in each. As I mentioned, we haven't had an affordable housing project go through yet, most likely because HUD is probably a little bit more complex in dealing with debt stack, but it's not impossible.
All right, thanks, Kimberly. Anybody on the committee that has any questions for Kimberly?
Do you know of any other affordable housing projects that have used PACE financing in Wisconsin?
Slipstream does run the city of Milwaukee's program along with the state of Wisconsin's, and we have not had an affordable housing project go through yet. In the US, there have been 7 that have went through. There is a national lender that is very comfortable with working with those type of PACE projects, but as I mentioned, there's about a list of 10 that have committed to doing funding green financing for affordable housing. It is a little bit more complex when HUD is involved. But then, and sometimes you have, I see there's, we have at least a lender in the group and perhaps more than one person in finance. So, you have your TIF funding and your historic tax credits. It could be a lot of mixture of things along with the property owner's equity that they may want to toss in there too. And it just is that one little sliver that with PACE, we're finding, especially with the interest rates rising, that a lot of different market sectors are using PACE for that reason. Not only is it helping them install the equipment that they should have installed perhaps 20 years ago, but it's allowing them to lock it in for the next 20.
Kimberly, I had a couple of questions. As an affordable housing developer.
Yes.
So the spread that you use, is it's a spread based on some index. So what index is used for establishing kind of the interest rates on these PACE loans?
Well, and that's why we do encourage people to shop. In Wisconsin, it is not, it's not very similar to the other PACE programs in the country because they aren't all open market. Here we are. So we do encourage you to shop as a property owner to get the best deal that you can for, because again, you're not locking it in for 9 to 12 years, you're locking it in for 30. So if you can shop those rates, and again, it's not going to be the cheapest cost of capital out there, but when the debt doesn't reset and you are locking it in, I wish I could look in my crystal ball and say, sure, the rates will go back to where we saw them in the last 2 years. I would not bet the house on it at this point, though.
Right.
where I think we're going to considering what we're looking at right now and what we might look at in a year. These might look like favorable rates right now even.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for developers looking to use these funds, I mean, if you have a gap that you're trying to fill,
Yeah.
this is really a great way to do it. But, that some of the heartache that I think this program has created is that when you move into a priority position over the first lender,
Mhm.
yet your cost normally is, substantially more than what a normal lender would provide.
Mhm.
And I think, it's always kind of baffled us as to why are the PACE rates higher than the primary lender when PACE is in a priority position, given that it goes on the tax rolls.
And I think it's that I'm speaking for the lenders themselves.
Yep.
But I think it's because they're locking in. So they're locking in for, upwards, if you're using solar, you're locking in for 30 years. And for those who locked in 2 years ago at 5, again, they've got that 5% interest rate for
Yep.
with solar up to 30. They're going, yay, I'm sure. But
Yeah. And I think most of your affordable housing developers, at least us as an example, we would, you're looking at, say, a HUD financing, which locks for, maybe as long as 35 years. So maybe that's a little different type of borrowing than maybe a, for-profit market rate, developer, what kind of loan terms they might be considering.
mhm. And some individuals are knocking out the mezz debt and using the PACE for that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that takes it from, what is it, like 12.7 down to 6. So if you're talking millions of dollars, that's a lot of money.
Any other questions for Kimberly? Lisa?
Just a simple question. Thank you for your presentation, Kimberly. I jotted down what the acronym PACE stands for, but I noticed on some slides it said C-PACE.
Yes.
What's the C for?
It's for commercial.
Okay.
In the country, there are only 2 programs or 2 states that allow for residential PACE. Wisconsin is not one of them. So we started calling it C-PACE to make sure that there was no confusion, because it is for commercial property assessed clean energy versus just PACE is a general acronym that encompasses everyone.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, Kimberly, thanks so much for
You bet.
joining us and kind of sharing this information for the committee.
Sure. Thanks, folks.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on to agenda item number 3. And
That's me, I think.
yeah, Kelly.
Hello, everyone. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the city of Middleton, and I work with Daphne. I'm in the planning department. And I put this on your agenda to go through some eligibility criteria for a project we're working on. But let me back up and explain a bit the project, because a lot of you are new and weren't a part of the meeting about a year ago now, I believe, with workforce housing and sustainability to talk about this program. And it's taken a while to get it off the ground as well because of federal reporting questions and things we've had. So I'm going to share my screen and just show like 4 slides to get you up to speed. Okay, does everyone see that, my screen?
Yes, we do, Kelly.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay, so this project is a project to reduce energy burden for low-income housing tenants of naturally occurring affordable housing. Those are your smaller apartment buildings, duplexes. They can be larger as well, that are naturally occurring. And so it's a lot of times older housing stock. And it's really important in Middleton to, as much as we can, to preserve some of that housing so that we can keep some truly, if naturally affordable housing in the city. And an opportunity came about to work in this type of housing stock when the city was allocated about $2 million through the American Recovery Plan Act a year and a half or so ago as a result of the COVID pandemic. And when ARPA, that's the acronym for American Recovery Plan Act, when ARPA was first doled out as a program to municipalities from the federal government, it was seen, it was to be used for helping those most affected economically or in any way by the COVID pandemic. They then later on changed that guidance and opened it up for a much wider availability to use those funds for the municipality. But when we made a lot of our initial decisions on what we could spend this ARPA funding on, we chose a lot of equity and sustainability items that directly addressed the folks in our community who might have been struggling, or they were food insecure or housing insecure. So this program spun out of that, and it's a program that has a project partners with Elevate Energy, which is a national nonprofit firm that works with affordable housing projects, and also locally Sustained. We are working with community partners in Middleton on this project as well. MOM is a part of the project, and the Senior Center is a stakeholder and part of this project. And then ancillary groups are groups like Latino Workforce Academy, who are working on a very related, and in conjunction with this program, a workforce accelerator to help train contractors to do energy efficiency work in housing, to do things like install heat pumps and do energy retrofits and keep the workforce local, and specifically try to target minority, women, veteran-owned contractors who may not have the resources to get the certifications they need to do these jobs. And so we had a relationship with Elevate Energy and Sustained and had been talking about doing work in affordable housing here in Middleton to tick sort of two boxes for Middleton. One is our community-wide energy goals to reduce carbon emissions citywide by 2050, 100%. And then also to help folks access some of the benefits of a reduced energy burden, reduced energy costs for their utility bills every month, which would then help give them a break after suffering through COVID and a lot of the economic setbacks. And so the program that Elevate runs is, they call it the Efficiency Navigator Program. And I'll just go through really briefly some of the main points of this program. The program's aim is to really address the smaller and medium-sized multifamily housing. So more of like the 1 to 4 to 6 unit housing stock in Middleton or anywhere they're working. And they work to make that housing more efficient and also more healthy with better indoor air quality, more resilient, increase housing stability for tenants, and help reduce the energy burden. They target residents at or below the 80% area median income based on the census data, which we have mapped in Middleton, so we know where those areas are. And some of the eligibility, which is truly is the document that I put on the agenda. One of the eligibility requirements is that it's renter occupied and that the tenants pay their electric bills. And one of the reasons that we see the need for this and why it's important is because as this committee talks about a lot, we do have an affordable housing shortage in Middleton and we need more units, but there's also the strategy of preserving what we already have. And in Middleton, there's quite a disparity about the families who, with their rent and transportation costs, it's a very high percentage of their monthly income. And there's quite a disparity between folks who are dealing with that sort of situation and then folks who can afford the rent or the house and the utilities. So we're trying to decrease that divide. Thirdly, climate change, affordable housing tends to not be as airtight, and older types of housing, older HVAC systems. So typically the energy costs are much higher in this type of naturally occurring affordable housing, sometimes 33% more. And then another thing is it's sometimes hard for building owners who have tenants to be able to access the programs like Focus on Energy and have the time to really do some of the retrofits and know how to do them. And this program helps walk those building owners through this process. And they also work with tenants to do a lot of outreach on how this will benefit them. I'm trying to progress it to the next slide. I'm wondering if it's just delayed. Sorry about this. Oh, there. Okay. And this basically shows there's some barriers for building owners to address energy efficiency in this type of housing. You know, things like limited awareness of programs or lack of energy use data and understanding what the priorities are in their building. And this energy efficiency navigator has Elevate. They go into the buildings. They're a single point of contact that support the owners through the whole process. And they do energy assessments in the building, and they pinpoint what the building would need to be more efficient and how much it could reduce the energy costs for that building. And it provides them a roadmap. And it also provides the initial help with first costs so that the building owners can go ahead and do these projects. And it also helps provide customer service to the building owner, but also the tenants and also the contractor and community stakeholders to take everyone together through the process. And this is another way of showing like how the program works, which I think is a good visual. The top line shows sort of the project. It starts with outreach with your community partners. And I still feel like we're in the outreach portion of the project, but we'll quickly move into the other parts of the project, like assessing the buildings, choosing the buildings, bids and quotes, and then actually the implementation. But I think the project takes quite a while to get off the ground because you have to get your stakeholders involved and do a lot of initial outreach, develop eligibility criteria so that the process is fair and transparent and people understand how the buildings are selected. And so then Elevate Energy and Sustained will take the project through the whole process. So they work with the property owner through the whole thing. They also work with the energy engineer during this part that the energy engineer will be involved. They work with community partners and they do assessments at the end as well. And they also do a lot of tenant outreach. And then lastly, the last slide here just shows some of the different levels of work that can be done in buildings. And there's different ways of doing energy efficiency in this type of housing stock. You can do the lighter, low-hanging fruit stuff like lighting, switching light bulbs out, water aerators, ceiling, insulation. And then that ramps up to working on the more expensive things like HVAC replacement. And then finally, the deeper retrofits, which would be actually electrifying the building, meaning taking out natural gas and putting in heat pumps that use electricity instead of natural gas. And then to offset that additional electricity use, putting on solar. And in that case, in those really deep retrofits, especially when you get solar included in your project, can take the energy bills down by 75 to 80%. Which is what they're seeing in Madison on the projects they're working on there. So we decided in Middleton we talked about whether to do more buildings and do a very light pass through the building or whether to do several really deeper retrofits. And we decided to do that because that would provide the greatest benefit to tenants in reducing their energy burden and the energy costs per month. And it would also provide a greater reduction in carbon emissions. So that was sort of our thinking on that. And that's a very quick overview. There's other aspects to the program. We have a public health grant that will work in conjunction with this, which will look at mold and lead and pesticide mitigation at the same time that the energy retrofits are happening. So that the goals can be more than just energy cost reduction and emissions reductions. It can also be increased indoor air quality and a safer, comfortable living situation for the families. Now, the big question that I think everyone always has is, how do you make sure that if you put money into a building that the tenants are actually going to benefit and see the benefit of these things? And Elevate has worked on this in quite a few projects now around the country. And they tend to, it's really about the process and getting to know the building owners, vetting them somewhat, and being very careful up front with your eligibility criteria, how you select the buildings, how you work with the building owners, who your community partners are who have those relationships, and then having the building owner commit to keeping the rent stable and level for about 3 years at least. That's sort of the agreements they've had in the past on other projects. It unfortunately can't be legally binding, but I think the devil in the details is working with the building owner and making sure they're on board with the goals in this type of project from the beginning. And then, you know, having them commit to not raising the rents. And in the end, it can save everyone a lot of money, and they feel pretty confident about that. So that's sort of the longer elevator speech. And the eligibility criteria that's in your packet is sort of a, I guess you could say, a filter of sorts to when we open the application process up. And we'll do a lot of outreach as well to make sure people know about this program. When people apply, building owners apply to this program, we'll need to make sure that the buildings meet certain criteria. And those are things, for example, that they pay the tenants pay their electric bills, not the building owner. And that the buildings we select are in a census tract where 50% or more of the people living in that district or that census tract have an AMI of 80% or below. And things about carbon emissions reductions. So there, as you'll see it's just a 2-page document, there's primary criteria and then secondary criteria. So there, if you look through that, you may see certain things under the secondary criteria that you think should be primary, or things that aren't included in that criteria. And what we're looking for as city staff is any feedback you might have on that initial sort of filter for the buildings that will eventually be selected. After buildings are taken through that eligibility criteria, Elevate will then do further deeper dives into the buildings and do actual energy assessments, because some buildings may meet these eligibility criteria, but then when they go to the building to assess it, maybe there's standing water in the basement and really horrible mold problems, or it's structurally unsound, in which case that may not be the best building to work on, because in order to do energy efficiency work, you would first have to expend $80,000 to secure the structure. So Elevate will have engineers that go through the buildings to assess like which buildings will be ripe and the best to save the most money and give the biggest benefit for the systems that they could improve that building with. So there's more to the process than simply the eligibility criteria. And there's also added into that a lot of tenant education and building owner relationship building to make sure that we feel confident that the building owner is on board with the project and is a good fit for the program. So I'm going to stop talking there. I'll stop my share. What I would love is if I know that this is a lot and it's not something that you may be able to comment on right away. But I'm hoping that if you have comments, I could get them sometime before the end of next week, perhaps. We intend to have another stakeholder meeting where our stakeholders will go through the comments that come from workforce housing, from sustainability committee, from the senior center, from MOM, and we'll fine tune that. And then we'll move forward with creating application. Well, the application is being worked on right now, and the outreach plan And we intend to take these eligibility criteria to council for a vote to approve on December 6th. So they will be edited before that time in a more clear manner, but that's it for now, I think.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Great presentation. I guess at this time, I'd open it up to the committee or anybody else on the call to see if you have any questions for Kelly.
I have a question just on the number of buildings that you're hoping to touch, I guess. Obviously, you have to go through all the different eligibility stuff, but I mean, what percentage of buildings in Middleton that might meet this? How many do we hope to do?
Okay, yeah, sure. We're currently allocated 300,000 through the ARPA funding for both projects in 2022 and 2023. The 2022 projects are going to be rolled over to 2023. So that would include about 6 buildings. It could be 8, it could be 5. I think it'll at least be 6. And depending on what the buildings need or what the situation is, we may be able to do more than 6. We saw a building during a walk around District 4 in Emily Kuhn's district. We saw a building that already had electric heat. And so in that case, it might be cheaper to switch out a heat pump into that situation. So it sort of depends on what buildings come across the application. And once we get into those buildings, see how much good we could do with the money we have to have the greatest impact over the most buildings, I suppose. But I think probably 6 or 7 buildings is a safe bet. And those would be probably 2 to 4 unit buildings. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility that we could work on a 6 unit building or an 8 unit building but I think right now that's the target is 2 to 4 unit buildings. And those are the buildings that sort of seem to slip through the cracks on things like PACE and other funding sources. So that's why we're targeting those.
Other questions for Kelly? Anybody on the committee or on the call?
Yep. Hey, Kelly, it's Ben. I've got a question. Thanks for going through this. So I was looking, there's other criteria, but at least a lot of the primary criteria is looking at are kind of like yes, no type things. So I guess it's just, some of the secondary ones are more kind of ranges, but I guess it's just thinking through if you get 20 applicants, right? And they kind of meet the check marks, what would be the prioritization process or selection process?
I think it would also involve, are those 20 units in the census tracts that we've identified? I mean, really, there's really a lot of documents that would be helpful to look at with this. Okay. Daphne created some great mapping for Middleton that layers a lot of information, such as age of building, median income, people with cars or without cars. Like there's a lot of different layers you can add on top and then really see where those units are located. And so it may be that we have 20 applicants, but maybe 10 of them are in our target areas where we know it would tick a lot of boxes on the people we're trying to help, I suppose. And then in that case, Elevate will do more assessments than the buildings they eventually choose. So let's say we get it down to 10 or 12 good applicants that meet the eligibility criteria. They're in the census tract that is we've targeted. Then they will go out and get into all of those buildings and see maybe 2 of them get sort of knocked off the list because they have no ability to put solar on their building, or maybe the structural situation isn't good in a couple of them, or one floods twice a year, something like that. Then it would get down to that probably level of deciding, and also what systems are already in the building and where you can do the most good with what you've got.
Kelly,
So-
I had a question as it relates to kind of the owner, criteria, in selecting, recipients of these funds. So you had talked about a property owner that commits to maintaining affordable rents. And again, the question is what constitutes affordable rents? Is that at some threshold? Is that 80% AMI or less? And then the rationale behind 3 years, because it seems to me you do have the right as the city to, lay out longer criteria if you'd like. If we're going to provide this funding to you, we want you to do it for 5 years, 10 years. No different than a TIF contribution. The city has the right to, put strings on the receipt of these funds. So just curious as to staff's rationale for this criteria.
I think that was maybe the criteria, I'm letting my cat out. I think that was the criteria that had been selected in other projects. So I think that is definitely on the table for editing or for changing. It is true, like it's up to the city. So I think we could definitely extend that to longer than 3 years. We could maybe be more specific about what constitutes affordable rent. We could make it more detailed. I think as in all things like this, like you don't know how detailed to get because you don't want to knock off a really great situation because it didn't meet one really specific thing. But at the same time, we could do that. We can change this to be more specific and any terms that we want the owners to commit to.
Yeah, and at a minimum, certainly giving preferential treatment to those owners that are willing to commit to either a deeper degree of affordability or for a longer period of time. It seems to me that would be relevant as you select these projects.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'll definitely write that into the comments. I think that's definitely something we should try to get in there or state clearly.
Other questions or comments that others on the committee have? Kelly?
Hey, this is Sam. Oh, Alan, did you have a question?
No, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Hey, I just had a question about the projected energy savings and if we would be able to calculate that up front, and there are folks that are able to do that.
We have examples from other buildings. I think the buildings would probably be so different that it would have to be on a case-by-case basis, but they definitely would do that through the energy assessment when they go into those buildings. They would know how much energy was used per year, and they would know what systems they have, and then they could project what kind of energy savings you could see. And they feel really confident that by electrifying the buildings, and then especially the buildings that can have solar in conjunction with that they can reduce energy costs by substantially for the tenants, in some cases even almost zeroing those out. But I do think it would be on a building by building basis after the assessment. You could learn those things. But we could get data from the other projects that they're working on.
Great, thanks.
Other comments? Alan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like the idea of the degree of affordability or a longer term commitment as a way to boost the project or property's place in access to these funds. So seconding that idea. And then you mentioned that there wasn't any legal recourse for the rents. It's a upfront commitment. That's just like, there's nothing else we could do. It seems like we should have some way to address a violation of that commitment.
Right. I know I've talked to Elevate about that, and they haven't done any commitments that are legally binding. I don't know if that's possible or if it's possible, but it would just be so if owners would just not sign that. I don't know. I wish Elevate could address that question because they have more experience with how it's gone and typically what they say and what they've seen from those commitments.
And Kelly, is this really administered by Elevate, or, you know, what's Elevate's role relative to the cities? And the reason I ask that, if the city were providing this type of funding for a project, you know, Alan, to your question, you know, normally there would be what's called a limited use restriction agreement, a LURA, that would be put in place, which in very simple terms just say, hey, we're giving you this money and the owners are committing to provide, you know, all 4 of these units at 80% AMI or less. And you would provide a report, say on an annual basis, just confirming that you are in compliance with that. That becomes a little onerous for smaller projects. I mean, it's easier for big property owners to do that because they're accustomed to it. It might be a bit problematic for a smaller owner, but I mean, that's one way to kind of, you know, do the check and balance that I believe you're asking about.
Okay, yeah, I will look into that. Currently, as it stands, the Elevate runs the Navigator program and administers it, just because the city doesn't have, I think, that skill set to see the whole thing through from beginning to end. But you know, maybe there's a way that you could work that out in the way the project's organized that would give the city that ability. I just don't know how that works.
So Kelly, are you looking for any official action from this committee, or just, you know, what we're doing here, giving you feedback, suggestions, things to consider?
I guess I'm not requiring a formal action or a motion at this time. I would really appreciate feedback. I've already gotten some great feedback that I've written, but if you think of anything else, you can email me with that feedback before not this Friday, but before next Friday.
Week from Friday, okay.
Yeah, and then this will go to council on December 6th.
Okay.
So that council can take a look at it and have the final say.
All right. And if there aren't any questions, thanks, Kelly. Great, great news. I mean, any opportunity to provide more funding to improve, affordable housing in Middleton, I think is a great thing. So, thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
Daphne, I think now, unless there's anything else for this section of the meeting, I think we're gonna all log off. Is that right? And then jump back on.
Yes, I think thanks, Kelly. Just to
thanks,
be
Kelly.
sure, we might have to adjourn this meeting and then start the next meeting, like
Okay.
reopen the meeting, just to be safe since it is a joint meeting.
So can I have an official motion for adjournment?
Been a while since I did my Robert's rules, so I'll put a motion to close the meeting.
Second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. So thanks, everyone. We will reconvene here in just a minute.
Yep. So jump onto that other meeting that's on the agenda. So
All right.
see you guys soon.
Thanks all.